Welcome to the talk show Promising Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement. Viewers, today we have invited two special guests, and they are very important in the context of foreign policy of Bangladesh, and they are: one is Mr. Touhid Hossain, former Foreign Secretary; other being Mr. Shahidul Haque, former Foreign Secretary. And this is a rare opportunity for me to invite these two personalities together here. And today our talks mainly rotate around geopolitics and the recent election in Bangladesh. Well, Mr. Touhid Hossain, you were the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, and as if you are the store of so many information from the standpoint of international relations, diplomacy. What is your recent realization about the geopolitics centering Bangladesh?
Thank you. Let me be very clear from the beginning that I am not privy to any confidential information. It's only what I see around, what comes to me from the media itself, and then a little bit of my own, thinking that what can happen after this. I think an important change that has taken place, we all are aware of that in recent years, is that the belief that the West looks at Bangladesh through the eyes of India. That was a prevailing, belief for a very long time, but then I think that has changed. And the West now looks at Bangladesh as Bangladesh, not just through India. This is an important development, and because Bangladesh has become a more important country, Bangladesh's economy has grown, and our interactions with the wider world has also increased a lot. So that is the basic premise on which we should think about geopolitics of the region around Bangladesh. In the regional context also things have changed. You see the footprint of China. We had for a very long time very close and substantial relations with China, but the Chinese footprint has changed in the positive for the last 10-15 years. And at the same time, relations with the regional hegemon, India, has also intensified between particularly during the regime of the present government for the last 15 years. Although these two countries are mutually antagonistic on many of their issues of interest, their interests in the political situation in Bangladesh has converged, which is that both these great powers has preferred that the regime of the present government, with whom they are both comfortable, should continue. And the 2024 election has given such a result, which is with which both these great powers are comfortable with. Before the election, I think it is for the first time that there has been such a polarization had taken place. The important parts of the world had become very clearly polarized. On one side was India, China, and Russia, and on the other, the USA, EU, or what we euphemistically call the West. And they had very distinct opposing positions. One was that let the elections be as it is, as the government is planning, let it go on. Whereas the West had wanted that there should be a quote-unquote free, fair, credible, and participatory elections. Now clearly the election that has been conducted has not gone with what the West had wanted. So when the reactions to the results of the election came in, it was predictably in the line of this polarization. These three countries very quickly congratulated the government. Whereas if we look at the wordings of UK, USA, European Union, to some extent, we see a little difference, which is that both the UK and the USA has said that this election has not been free and fair. And EU position also similar to that. Now the question is that why so much of interest in the Bangladesh election? Again, because the players on both sides have been involved in the geopolitics of the region, particularly since the Indo-Pacific strategy that has been developed by the US. Not really the US, it started with Japan, if I remember, and then but the main proponent now is the US. They have a sort of interest which doesn't always, particularly in the Indian Ocean region, it doesn't always in conformity with what the Indians want. The US desires and the Indian position doesn't tally exactly. On the issue of containing China, they are with each other, but then otherwise the India would have, would like an Indian Ocean that is their backwater. So they would want the US as some sort of a aiding power, but not the main player in this region. They want to remain the main player in this region. So what the US will do is, I think, to be seen and to be observed for the coming months. That's what my understanding is. Just because they have said that the elections have not been free and fair, doesn't mean that they will go take action against the government. Although there are certain indications about, for example, visa restrictions. Now, visa restrictions is something which perhaps the US, in my opinion, they will perhaps be going ahead with imposing this on a good number of people perhaps. But this is something which is not a public thing, because they will do it privately to individuals. They will not announce that we have blacklisted this person or that person. I think if it restricted to that, the government can handle that. There will be some problems, but it will not spell any serious problem for the country's economy. Unless the US decides to go beyond that. If they do not, then I don't think there will be any problem. I think I'll stop here, and then maybe we can put some other words afterwards.
Thank you very much. Md.Shahidul Haque, you held the office of the Foreign Secretary for long, about 7 years onward. What is your understanding which is taking place at this very moment in Bangladesh, especially China and India, which are not on good terms at all, but on points of Bangladesh, they are on the same boat. What are the magics here?
Good. Thank you very much. You are absolutely correct that on the Bangladesh election, both India and China visibly expressed the same position, continuation of the government for the purpose of stability. Now, before we go into that, I think, since the title is geopolitics and Bangladesh, I think we need to sort of loosely look at what geopolitics is. Geopolitics is a way of studying interaction between and among the states based on three factors. One is the geography, the second is the demography, and the third is the economy. So if you look at these three indicators and then the policies, you will see that all the three factors or drivers of geopolitics is in the process of changing very fast. So that's why we see that 22, 23, 24 continue to remain a tumultuous time. It is more than a change, even little additional than transformation. So that's one. The second is, for some reason or other, from say late 70s, early 80s of the last century, America became the unipolar force. It really had the power and authority to intervene in anywhere they wish and control. So that gave them quite a bit of a leverage. But it did not continue. They lost the unipolar moment to a multipolar states. And often they say the sort of withdrawal of Afghanistan was the manifestation of that. But we have to remember that the United States continue to remain the only power currently which can actually mount a military, you call invasion or attack, in 3 fronts. No other country in the world has that capacity to sustain that kind of a military action. So geopolitics is basically military, although economics is part of it. So that's where it is. Now, what we are seeing, we are sort of in the middle of a 2 transformation. One is that the world order, which was established after the Second World War, is collapsing, changing, because the United States and the values and the interests based on which the international relations or order was established, this no longer possibly could manage the global processes of today. But normally, international order goes through such transformation only through a war in the past. This is the first time we are seeing there is no major global war, but the order is changing. So since the order is changing without a war, now where is the chemistry? Who is going to take over? From whom? That's not defined. And that's why we see a lot of ambiguities and confusions. And often we say in the international relations that we are in between 2 orders. One collapsing, and the other we don't know how it looks like. In the midst of it, we have to see us and internationals. So that's one. Why South Asia? The center of political and economic gravity has shifted from west to Europe to Asia. In fact, Asia was the center of both the political and economic power about 350 years back, where this part used to produce more than 50% of the world GDP. And these are available statistics. It has gone from there to Middle East and to Europe and to United States, and now it is coming back. So that's something we need to look at, and everybody looking at Indo-Pacific or Asia-Pacific. But within that, there's 2 very important areas, which was important 350 years back, is the Bay of Bengal and the South China Sea. These were very critical in those days and continue to remain very critical. These were not only in terms of maritime, but also in terms of productions. There was 2 centers which produced most of the wealth for the British Empire. One is the Punjab, United Punjab. The other was the United Bengal, where Bangladesh was a very integral part of that economy. So what I'm suggesting that not only history repeats itself, but also economy repeats itself. So that's why there's so much of interest in South Asia. Now, there's some bit of a mistake that Americans made after the World War II, but they thought, or they possibly gave the South Asia and part of Southeast Asia to UK to take care of it because of the colonial presence. And they withdraw actually to Middle East and other places. But after 71, it's a very significant departure in American foreign policy. In 71, for the first time, they realized that they have not much control on South Asia, especially in the Bay of Bengal. Because in 71, if you recall, before they sent their 7th Fleet, the Soviet submarines were already there and which they were not aware of. So that was the time they started revisiting that South Asia has to be brought under their influence. Where is Bangladesh in election? Election is a very integral part of not only governance, but also geopolitics. And there is currently 2 models of geopolitics and economy or governance floating. One, the very Western model, which is called based on the Washington Consensus. There will be it's basically a neoliberal economy. There will be elections. There will be rule of law, rule by consent of the people. But there's also another very important model emerging, which is called Beijing Consensus, where party is very important. It is basically a governance system based on Communist Party of China. They are more important, they are more significant than the government. So and the first time the world has seen there are multiple models of governance. So when you talk about democracy and elections, it's not the only way of governing Western way, but there are multiple ways. And which one will eventually survive? We don't know yet. So that's why is not only geopolitically, but also in terms of elections and governance, we are also going through a major changes. I leave it there. Let's go into the dialogue and we'll see how it emerges. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Shahidul Haque, we are going for a short break and come to you again. Well, viewers, we are going for a short break and come to you again very soon. Thank you. Well, we are back to the talk show Promising Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement. And we were having talks with two giant diplomats of Bangladesh, one Mr. Touhid Hossain and other being Mr. Shahidul Haque. Both of them were Foreign Secretary. Well, Mr. Touhid Hossain, you know very well that we have many problems with Myanmar, especially Rohingya. And America has passed a bill, that is Burma Act. What is your understanding about the consequence of this bill, the effect on Bangladesh?
Well, Mr. Shahidul Haque had been very intricately involved, very intensively involved in the whole affair of the Rohingyas.
Yeah.
I'm sure he can throw more light on it. But as I see it from the outside, is that this is perhaps the most serious problem that Bangladesh has had ever since its independence, because this is one problem that has been thrust on us. It's not us who did anything. It's a problem that has been thrust on us. And second thing is that in the 6+ years that the problem has started, we have not been anywhere near a solution. We have had an agreement, there were negotiations, there were ways how this is to be solved, etc. But in the final tally, nothing has happened. Not a single soul has gone back to their home. The problem has been further compounded by the 1st February 2022 coup in Myanmar. Well, the Myanmar military was virtually in power, but there was some sort of semi-civilian rule by Aung San Suu Kyi. That also was just set aside completely by the Tatmadaw. The Tatmadaw is, and now there is all over this opposition against the Tatmadaw all over the country. Now, there is a qualitative difference between what used to be opposition to the military rule earlier and now. For the first time, the majority Burma population have also called for a armed struggle against the military. This has never happened before. There were, problems. There were movements against the military sometimes and in favor of democracy, etc. But never the majority community had taken up arms against their military. But this is for the first time this has happened, and there is a, this NUG, the National Unity Government, formed by the elected representatives whose election was nullified by the military, and they have formed a government. So it's a completely different ball game now. And besides, the military is suffering setbacks in many of the areas, including losing some of the ground, some of the towns elsewhere. So we are at a situation in which China is actually on both sides. Now, coming to the Burma Act of the USA, what they have allowed is that, without going into the details, that they have said that non-lethal assistance to the insurgent groups. Now, non-lethal assistance, how you explain it is a different thing, one. The second thing is that even if they get non-lethal assistance, they need beyond weapons many other things. If they can get it from the US, that is always good for them. But we must remember that the Chinese are also involved with the other side. So it's not sure what's exactly going to happen there. Besides, although the NUG has, for the first time, recognized the Rohingyas as the Rohingyas, no other authority in Burma had ever accepted used the term Rohingya. They are the first one who have done it. And they have issued at least 2 or maybe 3, I don't know exactly, at least 2 statements specifically for the Rohingyas, in which they have assured them that they will have rights and security back there, and they have invited them to join their struggle. as far as I know, we have not so far helped them to be part of the NUG, but that is there. I do not think, Shahidul Haque may be able to correct me if I am wrong, I do not think that the Tatmadaw is going to be militarily defeated and this NUG coming to power in Yangon or Naypyidaw, whatever it is. In my opinion, this solution of the present state of civil war in Myanmar is going to come to an end someday in a negotiating table. And it will depend on which party is having the upper hand at that moment of negotiation. And in a possible negotiating table, two factors will be important for us. Why I am explaining this is that this is all related to the Rohingya problem also for us. One is that will or can the NUG deliver what they are promising now, that rights and security and return of the Rohingyas to their land. It's both whether they will be willing to do it and whether they will be able to do it. Both are questionable. One. Second, a very important player has emerged. It's not very new, but then it had become prominent of late, which is the Arakan Army, AA. Now, Arakan Army is probably at this moment, if we leave aside the war state, Arakan Army is probably the most strongest of the insurgent groups. They have, it is believed that they have about 20,000 troops, quite well trained and with experience of fighting. They are fighting all over. They are fighting in the Karen area. They are fighting in the northeastern areas, whereas they are actually their area of interest is the southeast or northeast. Northwest, which is the Rakhine State along the Bay of Bengal. Now, when and if there is a situation in which there will be a resolution on the table, the support of or the position of AA, Arakan Army, will also be very important because they are known to be anti-Rohingya, but of late they have issued a statement in which they have said that they want the Rohingyas to be part of their administration, and they have also for the first time used the term Rohingya. I will come to you again this point.
Mr. Shahidul Haque, you handled the matter for a long time. Then what is your over-understanding of the Kofi Annan report, Burma Act, and the recent approach of America towards Rohingya? They asked the Bangladesh government to accommodate them. How do you review all these things?
Okay. No, thank you very much. I fully agree with Secretary Touhid's explanation. I will not go into that area. I'll just flag two things. One is that the whole Rohingya issue is not a Rohingya issue. It's a humanitarian issue. It's a human rights issue. It's a geopolitical issue. Often we miss the third one, where actually the relevance of Bangladesh comes in very strongly, in addition to the hosting of Rohingyas. So that's one. Second is, we have to remember that this part, the Burma, part of Bangladesh, including Chittagong port and Mizoram, Nagaland, these area has always been a very tumultuous area. It's called the new great game which is being played, in addition to the drug smuggling. So it has not grown organically the way other areas have grown. That's one. The second is this Burma and India, where it interfaces, is the place where watcher watched, Chinese watcher watched what India is doing, and Indian watcher watched what China is doing. And it goes to centuries back, not only in terms of strategic, but also in terms of innovation, business. That's the level of interaction. And there's a lot of trust and mistrust simultaneously. If you go to the bordering districts of India and Myanmar and China, you will see that the flavor continues to remain as to who owns which business. And there's a lot of business going on in the... So it's a much larger than Rohingya issue, and it's much larger than anything else. Now, the question is, as I said, that when British left and the Japanese left after Second World War, Americans did not come and occupy Burma. They left as it is to the military. And so is Bangladesh in terms of Pakistan and India. So they left it to them. It's not that the British and Japanese withdrew and the American came and said, look, this is now, it was a possibility. Actually, Americans could say that this Burmese theater is our theater now. But they did not, because they didn't see its strategic values in those days. So in these situations, if we look at the current situations, where I will not go into Secretary Touhid's explanation of things, I fully agree with it. Now, the surprising element was, which Secretary Touhid has pointed out, that never ever the Burmese military, Tatmadaw, thought that their own ethnic people will stand against them. This has never happened in the 500 years of history. They have always been very united against British, against Japanese, against Americans. But this is the first time they were surprised. Now, still there are research going on why the Burmese people are standing against the Burmese population. So that's where the issue is. Now, one of the explanation is because of the globalization, because of the democracy, because of the test of the world, because most of the people didn't know there's a world beyond Burma. It was so sort of inclusive. So in this, now everybody's eyes is the theater, the new theater, I call it. The new theater, whose influence will be more important? Is it India? Because as you know, Mizoram, Nagaland, Manipur, connected. And we have to understand that Burma has been a part of India for quite a long time, till 1885, when they lost. Before that, it was under their administration. Not only that, when the British occupied it, they brought people from Bihar and Bengal, and some from Uttar Pradesh, workers, to run part of Burma. So, you know, there is a history, and there is also a connection. When Manipur goes into flame, they look at Myanmar, so what's happening? Because most of the insurgents are coming from there, including drug smuggling, the rest of it. So, in that, the America, for the first time, realized that in this theater, they were nowhere to be seen. So, and Burma Act is not new. It was also enacted for Syria. Now, the extent of influence of Burma Act will depend how Congress will play its cards, how much money will be flowed in. This year, first time allocation has been made, number one. Number two, whose support they will get. Because certainly the Chinese will not have Americans to come and create a sphere of influence there. It is India. I doubt whether India will allow that to happen, because they know they have the seven sisters, especially Manipur, Mizoram and Nagaland. These are also very precariously they are managing a balance, and they don't want outsider to come and create a situation. Next is Bangladesh. Bangladesh has not been very open to the whole idea that Bangladesh should be the corridor to implement Burma Act. So that's where it stands, and that's why it's not only Bangladesh's economic advancement or not, also because of that Bangladesh has become very important strategically. If Bangladesh said, okay, we will help Americans to implement the Burma Act, you'll see a different scenario.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will go for a short break. Viewers, we are going for a short break and come to you very soon. Viewers, we are back again to the talk show Promising Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement, and we are having talks with two giant diplomats of Bangladesh, that is former Foreign Secretary Mr. Touhid Hossain and former Secretary Shahidul Haque. Mr. Touhid Hossain, this is our last part of the talk show. You know very well that government 12th election to the 12th parliament is over, and we are having the new cabinet and new council of ministers. You know the challenges before Bangladesh, globally, regionally, bilaterally, huge. What is your overall observation for the government coming in?
Okay, thank you. I think the external issues are quite intricately related to our internal problems also. Although the government is yet to recognize or accept the fact, our economy is in a pretty precarious situation. The price hike of essentials, then the issue of reserve, and the upcoming issues of payments for various projects which have already started and which are going to become more voluminous as the days pass. So, I think I look at it in this way, that we have to pay to our creditors, or with whom we are the debtors. We have to pay back in foreign currency. It's mostly to the East, Chinese. Well, Russia is not East for us, but then it's considered part of the East. But we have to earn the money from the West, because our market is in US and EU for our almost lone item that we export. Now, as such, what I feel is that we cannot afford to have an adversarial or problematic relations with the West. Now, on the issue of these elections, let us accept the reality that we have been having some problems with the West, in our relations with the West. And I would also say that the issue has not been handled very well by us, to accept the reality. So in that case, what I feel is that the challenge for the government will be to amend the situation and establish a cordial working relations with the West, even if they differ on issues. That is always there. You don't always have to agree on everything. But government must take initiative to establish a relation so that our economic relations with the West doesn't suffer. Now, from the point of view of the West, we have seen the reaction. They have not accepted that this has been, the elections has been free and fair. They have already made it clear. But there is still no indication in their initial reactions that they are going to take any action on this, although there had been some indications earlier on, before the elections. Now, I think we have to see that how the scenario develops, how seriously the West takes up the issue of elections, which in their opinion has not been free and fair, and how our government, how it handles that situation. If there is no amendment of the problems that has arisen, we are, I believe that we will be in for serious difficulties, because any sort of even partial restrictions on our trade, if that happens, that will lead to a lot of loss of job, not only loss of US dollars that will be coming in, but loss of jobs, and that might create even social problems for us, because about 4 to 5 million girls are working in this sector, in the garment sector. And any, already in some of the markets, the exports have slightly come down, and if there is a major problems in that area, and girls start losing their job, that will create serious problems for us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shahidul Haque, you are talking about Burma Act. Again, I come to you on the same issue. And do you think Burma Act ultimately shall have effect on Bangladesh?
Very good question. In fact, it's not only a Burma Act. There are multiple sort of a development that's taking place in South Asia, in the Bay of Bengal, which will have an impact on Bangladesh. This is not new. You know, it reminds me, and when I read history, going back to 71, Bangladesh born out of a Cold War. It was a product of geopolitics, extreme geopolitics, West versus the East. And when it was liberated, Bangladesh, the then government under the leadership of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman did survive extreme hostile environment, and Bangabandhu did navigate very carefully between Americans, between China. China wasn't with us in those days. Between the Middle East, between the India and Soviet Union. But see how he was successful in laying bricks for future of Bangladesh. So that's what I'm saying, that it needs to do some bit of a course correction. I fully agree with Secretary Touhid that unless we do that, it's not that Bangladesh will disappear. We'll have much more difficult. The takeoff position for any country like airplane is the most vulnerable time. If you cannot put the full throttle, it will collapse. I don't think it will happen, but course correction is very important and critical. It's not only economy, but also geopolitics. Often in the international politics, if you talk too much about economics, they said, stupid, it's politics that you're talking about. Because in every economy there is a politics, and that's the geopolitics. So, having said this, let me also tell you what course correction that I was thinking of. One is that you can say that business as usual. The way we have been running, we will continue to run that. We should look at our neighbor, India, 71. History says that United States identified India as their enemy in this part, and now they're the best of the best friends. They're sharing nuclear technology, which they haven't even shared with the European countries. So see how things could change if you do a course correction. That could be a possibility. And you have a friend which has always been a friend of Bangladesh, India. The big support. But India had none to build the relationship with the United States and the Western world. So that's one. So business as usual is certainly not the way. So what we do? We can either, we call it sort of a, not, it's a point when you cannot go on a straight line. Either you have to go up or down because you have been intervened with a barrier. So going up, you have to reinforce the engagement. And that's possibility. If Cuba can do it, whole world can do it. That's one. The other one is that we give damn to anything. We're not going to sort of take care of anything. We sort of de-link, decouple, de-engage, whatever you say. So there's two ways. In which way Bangladesh will go have to be decided by the political master. Those who have now got the people's mandate to run the country for next 5 years. They will have to decide as to which way they want the country and the people to go. But Bangladesh has huge possibilities, huge potentials to make a breakthrough. And whenever you grow, even in the village context, anyone who is growing fast, others will try and snap that particular person or the family down. It's very normal. It's the power politics. Geopolitics is nothing but the power politics. And who plays the power politics? It plays by political elite, business elite, military elite, and intellectual elite. There's 4 classes of elite that play that power politics. They have to have a discussion and say that which way we want to take our country. We look forward for a brighter Bangladesh, which Bangabandhu always imagined, visioned. We should go back the way he has changed his course in terms of running Bangladesh in a very critical period when we had nothing almost.
Thank you.
Now we have everything. So we should do better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shahidul Haque. Mr. Touhid Hossain, you are at the final stage of the talk show. What is your focus about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and diplomacy for the coming days?
Well, this is something very difficult. So one thing we must remember that the foreign ministry per se doesn't determine the foreign relations. Foreign relations is the outcome of the decisions of the entire government, of course, from the highest level. Foreign Ministry, what it can do is that from its experience, from its knowledge base, they can suggest what should be done. But it's the highest political authority who will always take the decision in consonance with all the ministry. In the parliamentary system, there is this joint responsibility. So ultimately, it is the government's decision which the Foreign Ministry implements. Foreign Ministry, of course, influences the process of decision making also, but it's not absolute. So what I feel is that the basic premise about which Mr. Shahidul Haque has mentioned, that there are two ways to go from here. Our political bosses will have to decide which way to go. Then we have a professional core of diplomats who will implement that decision. But I think the basic starts with that what the government decides, whether to go business as usual and just not care about what's happening, or take a proactive stand to engage those who really matter in the world and those who matter for us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sayeed, last question to you. You had been to the chair of the Foreign Secretary for a long time. Do you think the Standing Committee of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be more proactive and should be more vocal about the foreign policy of Bangladesh and its implementation also?
Thank you very much. I mean, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there is a bureaucratic structure and there is a political structure. The top is the Foreign Minister. The standing committees in the Parliament plays a very critical role, because that's where actually you are grilled. I have been grilled a number of times in terms of our policy. So that's a very good platform where you had the opportunity as a bureaucrat to offer scenarios. And not only scenarios, these consequences and fallout of the scenario, A, B, C, that what you adopt is not only a policy, but it will have to face the consequences. So that's a very good platform. I think we should continue to use it, and from there, a lot of policy debates comes out, because that's the place where the politicians interfaces with the diplomats, bureaucrats. Good platform, but how useful that is will only depend on the political masters. But let me differ with Secretary Touhid. The Foreign Office of any country has a very critical role in terms of maintaining the foreign relations. So I think that's equally applicable for Bangladesh.
Thank you very much.
If the Foreign Office cannot offer scenarios and the consequences, then political master will not be able to choose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Touhid Hossain and Mr. Shahidul Haque. Viewers, we are at the end point of this talk show, and before ending this talk show, I have to summarize what the two giant diplomats expressed and viewed about the foreign policy and the election to the parliament, including Burma Act. They are of the same mind about the Bangladesh development, challenges, dilemmas. At the same time, Mr. Shahidul Haque, especially, who is very much vocal about Myanmar, and he is concerned with the Burma Act. And both of them believe the Burma Act, to some extent, more or less, may have impact on Bangladesh in course of time, because it depends on the geopolitics and global play and regional play between the powers, power gamers, people who are involved here, especially America, India, China. And from the standpoint of geopolitics, Bangladesh is still a frontline state indeed. And we hope the new government under leadership of Sheikh Hasina may have a golden opportunity to settle the best for Bangladesh. And thank you very much. We'll meet you again. Thank you.